Hi, I'm Ante Jeroncic, and this is Artis Vivendi, the craft of living. So this week there's going to be a slightly different episode, mainly for two reasons. The first reason is that I had some technical difficulties with producing a regular episode, and there were also some personal reasons. So as a result of that, what happened is that I will only have a podcast episode of what I intended to be also a YouTube channel episode. So I would encourage you to go there to whoever your podcast provider is, to iTunes, let's say, and listen to the episode. I really share something that is very deeply important to me, very significant for me. And yeah, so that's one of the reasons. And the second reason is that I promised in the past that I would share a little bit about my approach to planning and how I actually put these identity values that I shared again in the past, how I incorporate it into my life by using Evernote. So I thought to give a little bit some tips, and for those of you who are using Evernote, you can then appropriate it as you see it fit. For others who are perhaps new to it, they can think about perhaps moving to Evernote, or if you have some other platform, you can do very similar things. Just make sure that you have tagging capabilities. So when you look at the way I have set up my Evernote here, you can see that the most important section, the basic section here, is the notebooks section. And it looks slightly different if you have a Mac. I have both a Mac and a PC. This is on a PC, but it's quite similar. And you can see that these notebooks that I have here, that I have organized my notebooks not according to topics. That's not what you want to do, I think. But you want to organize them according to the type of material that you have. So I have articles, which includes also, let's say, sometimes like even books and book chapters, but mostly articles I pick up from the web, or sometimes even academic articles. This is my journal where I enter my journal entries, life and vision. This is really the hub where I put together my values, my basic, approach to life, and my procedures, operation procedures, plans, strategies, goal setting, and all of these different things. And then here you have media. I have media because I sometimes want to have, if I have video clips or some audio clips, I usually put them in there. Not necessary, but I like to have them in one spot. Miscellaneous. The only reason I have miscellaneous is because I have things like recipes or some more professional type of material. And I really don't want to have like beans, or my recipes, let's say recipes, not beans, but recipes, like mixed up with some of the other stuff. Perhaps this is just me, right? And then I have some writing here. And I do writing, like free writing ideas that often then I delete those entries when I move them to some other places. But this is how I have this organized. So when you then click to articles, you have these very, very things that I collect, right? Things that I find interesting on the web. The most important thing for me is that, and I've fallen behind slightly here, but you can see that I tag these different things, right? And that is for me absolutely essential, that when I have an episode, you see, for instance, I have this one on habits. Okay, I forgot to add, so let me just add habits immediately here. Then later on, when I do a search, I can just go here, go to this tag, just press it here, and all my entries that I've tagged as habits, they will come up here on the site. Right, and if I move, let's say, well, let me look at the habits, not just among the articles that I have posted, but also like everything, all my notebooks, and then which includes my journal, my life vision, all these different things. then you can kind of change it here, and then it will move here, right? Or you do this, come here, right? And then you have habits, and then you have like, I made the change here actually. So, and then all the entries that I have about habits, they come up here. So this is for me very important, which brings me to tags. You can see tags here. I have organized them as follows. Doesn't look that nice in PC. It looks nicer in Mac. So let me just look here on the side. You can see that I've added these punctuation marks. And I don't think they're necessary. I think basically, since you never really do searches, you never really go like here, like you go to topics and then I never really go and read this necessarily, right? And then try to find what I'm looking for. You could actually have all of your tags just jumbled up. But for me, somehow, to have like beans show up here again, using beans as an example, where I have my recipes, between, I don't know, like bioethics and bias and beliefs, and then bang, beans, right? I don't know, it just seemed unseemly for me. So I kind of did organize these tags slightly, and I have tags, these are kind of professional things that I have about writing, speaking, whatever I need in my line of work. Books, these are book summaries that I do, and I will talk about them a little bit later. Right, so these are kind of books quotations from books, insights from books. I'd like to have them in a different spot. These are just topics, just all kinds of issues. People, I could have included them among topics here. Of course, there's no rule why you couldn't do that, but I like having them separate. So when I just, that I can find them easier, because thinkers actually, these are the things that I may want to go in here. Okay, let me just look what I have on David Brooks, like his articles, or, I don't know, Epictetus, or Ralph Waldo Emerson, or whatever, right? So I have them separate. You don't have to do that, but I kind of have it. And then I have here's where I do my different projects. Here are these are tags of the sources. And I've not been very faithful in doing this because it adds too much friction, like to tag every single article according to where I got it from. So I'm not really following this as I should be following it. But I like this, the Stone. The Stone is this great section in the New York Times where we have philosophers writing about contemporary issues. And sometimes I like to see, okay, let me just see what I have from the Stone, right? Because I appreciate that particular source. I want to have everything listed here. But again, you can see here 48 entries. I have way more, and I suspect that I did not tag all of them. I probably should go back through my Evernote and make sure that everything is included here. I have some here like class planning and material. When I find something that is, a good article or something that is helpful to perhaps to a discussion in my ethics class, I then kind of tag it. And then when we're looking for some material that my students can read, I can, I just go here and find that. I have a separate tag with my identity values. I will talk about this in a moment. I have here journeys. I don't think I will click this now, but different journeys in different areas of my life. Let's say journeys about mindfulness or journeys about health. And so all these important like journal entries that I had or insights that I had that led me to come to the spot where I'm right now. Oh, for like 5 years ago, I read about this issue for the first time, and then I got primed about it, and then, okay, then I found another article, and then I kind of tracing kind of how providence and grace has worked in my life, leading me from just the first insight to, failures, new experiences, new readings. So that's how this goes. I have recipes here. miscellaneous, different things. I don't need to share necessarily everything that's here. Okay, so this is how my Evernote is set up. Now here are my shortcuts. So these are things that I like to have quick access to. So for instance, you might recall that I shared about my identity values. And I have them set up this way. You can see that this is slightly different from what I had in the episode because I moved this essentialism sort of, category to be kind of my meta category being number 1 and then surrender being 2, attentiveness, life affirmation, and all of that. So I have this kind of set up. The preamble here is I did another episode where I looked at these fundamental archetypes of the mystic, the saint, the sage, and the warrior. I understand all of them in very specific ways. So I always encourage my readers and my listeners not just to run with these descriptions and kind of fill them in with some preconceived notions what they might mean. But these are kind of the archetypes that are important for me. A mystic for me is simply a person who seeks to live in the presence of God. And if there's a better term, I would use it. I haven't found like one word that would capture that. The saint is a person of integrity, of truthfulness, holiness understood in the sense of wholeness, that kind of aspect. The sage is this kind of wisdom aspect of life, growing into wisdom. And the warrior, being a peaceful warrior, has to do with intentionality, has to do with focus, has to do with everything that falls under that archetype. I talk quite a bit about that in my episode. And then I have these, you can see them how they are listed here. And what I have under all of them, I have these kind of links, and you can very easily make those links. When I press them here, I go to a page that describes what this is all about, and I like to read that. Like I like to read these things to remember, okay, what is this about? And I try to write for every single one of these identity values. I write out a brief statement, a brief essay that captures that vision. And then I go to here, I press essentialism principles. And these are some things that I have learned. I have, kind of what I mean by essentialism. And then I have a link that leads me back to this, right? And I can go back and forth. And then I have this is like my vision. Here's my principles. And here are kind of my practices and operation procedures. So what I think by vision is just basic ideas, like convictions that I have arrived at, right? Certain basic convictions about essentialism. But they're not necessarily part of any operation procedure or specific of any kind of decision-making system. So this is then what I have here. I have very specific things like what I do. When this happens, do that. When in situations like I told you a little bit about my sugar issue, if such situation arises, you do this, kind of a mapping in advance my decision-making process. And I go often through these things, right? I often reflect on that and remember what I shared in my video. So this would be like the first day of the month, I would reflect on, well, if I switch this around, it would be essentialism. And then I go here, right? I go and click this, and then I might go through tags, right? Okay, let me read a little bit on essentialism. Right, and I have to go here, go my notebook, right, to have all of my notes, and then I do some tags, right, and go to essentialism. And then I have a lot of some of the book summaries I've did from McEwan's book, let's say. This is one instance. I have a journal entry here. there's certain different, you see, J for me is journal entry. You find them here under journals. Some book summaries, again, some journals, some articles that I found, even some, like what I do, I copy things here. Here kind of reflected on some of the weaknesses in my life, and all of that. So, and then I might spend, today is my, let's say, my essentialism day. So let's say when I do before I begin my work day, I'll take, let's say, 15 minutes, go quickly through this, read 1 or 2 entries, spend some time reflecting on that, visualizing, well, how would I live today if this was true, right? Or perhaps in the evening then I go back to it, read another thing, perhaps journal about it, and that is how I try to be intentional when it comes to these identity values. Here I have, so these are these identity values. Here I have hierarchy of practices and priorities, and I perhaps it's better for me not to click this, but this is kind of the things that I consider to be the most important things in life, right? Things that and I constantly change that, so that's why I don't want to show it. But things, this is the number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, and again, bringing certain kind of mindfulness to the way I'm using my time every day. Here is for those of you who have listened to my previous episodes, and especially also this episode for this week, where I talk about visualization, imagination. I talk a little bit about the importance of like a good option perhaps to have to aid us in visualizing our identity values is to think about formulating an alter ego, the kind of person who actually embodies all of these values, and then to ask yourself, well, how would, in my case, I call this David Brunner, right? Like who he is. And then I, have these, basically what my identity values are and procedures that I have thought I kind of bring this to David Brunner. And I then, reflected, who is this guy? What would he do in such circumstances? Because basically David Brunner is it's me, me living out what I believe really to be important in life. Of course, we have to have grace towards ourselves and compassion and understanding that we will always fall short. But as I said many times before, the craft of living implies, getting better at things requires us to think of the means by which we seek to grow in the craft where we seek to have competency, right? And that was a little bit put in a cumbersome way, but you get what I want to say. Okay, and I have some other things here as well. Here is these are you can see these individual pages, entries, and these are more like tags, right? And this is would be all these alter ego entries that I have. Reflection on the Brunner and the ghost, who is this kind of negative, the opposite, right, of David Brunner. So the other side of the coin. And here I call them libraries, and this is basically the mental space I keep in my mind, where I curate quote unquote books or entries of, the good things and the lessons I've learned. So I try to go through this kind of like a mental sort of kind of remembering, experiences, victories, lessons learned. And I think it's important that we curate those memories because that is I believe, quite important, quite significant. Here are some of my essential journey posts, which are quite private and personal, so I will not press that. And then there are some other things. So what I try to do, what I've moved actually out of this planning, I moved some of the things. Perhaps I can show this very quickly. I have a Trello board here. I'm using Trello for these things where I'm dealing with some, this is kind of my management kind of, platform where I deal with basically my task list. And Trello is very nice because you can move these things around. And this is quite empty now because we are in the end of the week. So I was able to do that. But here I have some basic cards here, and where I have my weekly review, my chamber, which I haven't set up. I will tell you what my chamber is, and my daily kind of shutdown ritual, right? At the end of the day, these are kind of my procedures, what I go through. And then when I say everything is done, thank you, God, I close the day. I don't go back anymore to, technology, to social media. It's over. I'm unplugging. It's time for family, time for walking, time for kind of decompressing. And I'm following Cal Newport and try to follow a fixed schedule methodology and try following kind of his deep work philosophy, which I won't go into right now. But in any case, this is this used to be in my Evernote before, but now I'm keeping it in Trello because I think I want to have everything in one place when I do my planning for the week and for the subsequent day. I want to have all things to be there. So that is how I approach things. Now, you might have noticed, let me go back here very quickly. I have this chamber section, which I haven't really yet developed. And that is once a week, I set aside a certain number of hours where I have perfect peace in the home, which doesn't happen all the time. So I have to pick, moments when my wife is working outside of the home and my daughter is in school. I just sit down by the fireplace in my sofa, have a hot drink, a pen actually, in a notebook, and I just sit down. And I'm alone with my thoughts. I reflect on my life, reflect on any patterns I've noticed. I reflect on the journal entries. I reflect on my goals and research, and generally think about a lot of the things that I've been sharing on this channel. And I believe that these moments of solitude, right, the moments of solitude when we are free from the input of other minds, but our mind is free from the input of other minds, which is a good definition of solitude. And I took this from Cal Newport's Digital Minimalism. I think that does so much good to my soul. I feel that whatever time I allocate for such activities, I get that back with a, kind of huge interest on that. I'm getting back because it helps me to reconnect to my values, reconnect to my plans, be mindful of how I'm spending my time, what are my priorities, and all of that. So this is how I organize things. Now I also have, which is also a little bit more private, so I don't want to share that, but I have a specific plan that I have a master plan that I have for the whole week, where I look at my identity values, when I look what my life is all about, and I say, well, if you want to live a balanced life, this is the maximum amount of hours you can work, or this is the maximum amount of hours you can allocate for such and such an activity. And that is very significant for me, very important for me. And because unless you have these values, you won't be able to have this schedule. And unless you have this schedule, and you have to be flexible because things are happening all the time, unless you have that schedule, you will be kind of out of whack. Some areas of life are going to take over, or you won't be able, or you will end up saying yes to many things when you should be saying no if you forget the big picture in your life. So that is quite important to me, what I'm doing here. So going back now to my Evernote. So this is how Evernote is being used, how I use Evernote in my life. For me, it is extremely important that I constantly visualize these things, and that's what I talk about in the podcast episode that I will post, that I have posted already for this week. And if Michael Phelps can lie in his bed and visualize the perfect swim every day in order to be a better performer, better swimmer, better competitor, like, isn't this something that we should be doing on a regular basis? Now, for me, when the psalmist, when David says, that he's meditating on the law of God day and night, he's meditating not just as mere repetition of some commandments, but he is reflecting on these deepest values that he subscribes to, and then he asks himself, well, how do I live up to them? And how could I live up to them in such and such a situation? Now, one of the things that I like to do on a regular basis, especially during my shutdown rituals, is that I go through the books that I have read in the past, because I believe that every day we should go over some of the material that we learned in the past. I think repetition is so profoundly important, and I've learned this, was reminded of that by Jacques Ducan, who used to teach Old Testament here at Andrews, in the seminary here in Andrews, and he has a PhD in Jewish studies, if this is the right way to put it, and another PhD in the Old Testament. And he said, and he now retired, but he told me that every day he is, I'm sorry a little bit about this noise, but he said that every day he is spending some time reflecting and remembering things that he learned in the past. So what I like to do is to go to the books, like to my books here, tags, and I just go and then I pick a book, right? Pick a book and read through the quotes that I've taken. And I try to read them. And when I read them, whenever I read some new material, whenever I read some podcasts, when I listen to some podcasts that have to do with life and planning and productivity, I never try simply to listen, right? I always ask myself, okay, this is an excellent point that he or she raised. Do I have it in my values? Okay, I have it. It falls under this kind of identity value. Okay, that's covered. Now let me go into the kind of principles within that identity value. Do I have it somehow stated, right? That if you have that value, you should try every day, account for every minute of your day in planning such and such. Do I have this? Okay, I have it. Yes, boom, it's in there. Now, do I now have this in my operation procedures? Like every day when I actually do my scheduling and when I go through my week and when I go to the following day, am I actually taking that into account? So when I absorb these insights that I glean from others into the system, then I don't even need to memorize these things, right? I just need to have them listed, included in my sort of planning strategy, my reflection strategy, my meditation strategy. And then I know that I have absorbed that material. I don't need to go back and listen to that same lecture or presentation or podcast, or if it's a book, I don't need to read the book again because I have it kind of processed. And so this is how I absorb this. So I have these quotes, right? And I go through them and read them. But obviously, whenever I read these quotes, I'm asking myself, okay, when I see, for instance, when he says, James Clear, your habits embody your identity, or we are continually undergoing microevolutions of the self. Perfect comment. Perfect statement. Absolutely agree. Now, how is this now part of your value system? Like, how is this being utilized? Well, you understand the importance of mini values or micro values. Micro habits or mini habits or atomic habits. Okay, but how do I do that? How have I incorporated this into my daily planning and all this? So see, I always try to absorb these things and be mindful how I go about doing so. So this is what I try to do on a regular basis. Okay, as you can see, there are many other elements in my Evernote, some of which are more personal, some of which might not be relevant to you. But I have very quick access to these things, and I very, very quickly, whenever I have a topic that interests me, I can quickly go there and quickly find what I need. For me, as I said, it's extremely important to tag these things, right? Here's an article, and so it's tagged affect theory, affects, attention, moral epistemology. And here's the thing, right? It's easy to find an article, let's say, if you search on affect theory, right? I do a search and this article will come up. But let's say this article is really important for how to think about attention, but never mentions attention. The word attention is not mentioned in this article. When you do a search on attention, it will not come up, right? So I think it is way more important for me to tag this article, not as affect theory, because I would always be able to find that, but perhaps as attention and moral epistemology, right? Or this article that, this is one from Cal Newport, one of his from his blogs, right? And the good thing is here you can see, sorry, I'm kind of all over the place, but you can kind of click here, and if you click here, it will take you to the website, and you can actually read it there if you so desire. All right, so I think this is what I wanted to share, and I hope that whatever system you have a system where you can easily access information, where you can easily go to things that you need, that you have integrated your system into your daily planning, your journaling, your vision casting, that it kind of syncs with your identity values, and that you have a way of, on a daily and weekly basis, to think about and reflect, well, how is this actually going on in my life? How am I doing? What can I learn? How can I improve? And then always be kind to yourself, always be forgiving to yourself, because you actually have many more victories, and most of us have many more victories in life than what we sometimes give credit to ourselves. So, okay, thank you for listening. This was kind of a out of the normal episode, but I thought in light of my technical problems with posting the video, I said, well, this is a good opportunity for me to share this. I would encourage you again to listen to the podcast on imagination, because it covers some of these very important aspects that I just shared today. All right, all the best to you. Live well, stay strong, and until next time, goodbye.